What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, and today we've come together to preview the Mizzou versus Army Armed Forces Bowl game that will be taking place next week. Before going in depth on the game preview, let me say this. I'm glad Missouri is playing in this bowl game. I'm glad they got a bowl game. I know some people are lukewarm about playing in a bowl game and playing in this bowl game in particular. A lot of people were disappointed with the bowl game that Mizzou was assigned to. It's a non-SEC bowl since more SEC teams were bowl eligible than there were SEC bowls. But see, the thing is, with one of those SEC bowls, if Mizzou got selected from one of those, I mean, they could be going up against a team that they really have no shot against. And even though Missouri played a lot better towards the end of the year, at least on defense, offense is another story, and we'll get into all that in my preview. But you want a game that they can win because you ended the season 6-6, which no one is throwing a party for, but you know, you can live with 6-6, especially with the recruiting classes that Drinkwitz is bringing in. He just signed the top 15 class yesterday for the 2022 cycle on National Signing Day. So really, you just want to find a game where you can end the season on a high note. Drinkwitz would end, if he wins this bowl game, with a winning record, 7-6, right? But if he loses, then you could be 6-7, and that looks a little bit worse, right? I mean, in the end, I don't think anyone cares or is going to remember, but you still want to win the bowl game. You know, it looks good to have that over 500 record. And I do think the bowl game means a lot to some of these players, and it means a lot to Eli Drinkwitz. Drinkwitz is always, you know, since he's gotten here, he's always said that he wants to play in a game in which he can bring home hardware. He wants to play in a bowl game. He wants to win a bowl game, and he promised a lot of players that are on this current roster a bowl game, like center Michael Maietti. This will probably be his last game, and he's always wanted to play in a bowl game. Drinkwitz promised him a bowl game if he came back for one more year, and now he's going to have an opportunity to play in this. It seems like a lot of the players are bought into because a lot of them haven't played in a bowl game before. The only major player that we know isn't playing in this game already is cornerback Caleb Evans. He's going to be training for the NFL draft. Good for him. Don't fault him for that. A lot of people thought Tyler Beatty shouldn't be playing in this game with his NFL future that it looks like he's going to have, but he's going to be playing in this game. He's already said that he wants to play in the bowl game, which I think is fantastic. You know, I'm all for the players making their own decision when it comes to the bowl game. But the Caleb Evans loss, like, that hurts the secondary, but they have guys behind him that I think can step up, especially in a game against Army. And I'm not saying Army is a slouch or anything, but hey, they don't throw the ball that much. They're only averaging 8 pass attempts per game. They run the ball a lot, so if you can find a corner that can stick their nose in there and make a tackle, and, you know, just kind of scrap whatever coverage ability that a Caleb Evans had, then you should be okay. So I think this is a really good matchup for Mizzou. And for those of you that are upset with this bowl game that Mizzou has, hey, here's the bottom line. You got to show up to games. You've got to support the program. You've got to travel well. As Drinkwitz pointed out on signing day, they did not sell out a single home game this year. When you have low TV ratings compared to the rest of the SEC and you can't even sell out a single game during the regular season, then you're not going to get selected for one of these higher bowls because, you know, the SEC and the NCAA, they want the most possible people and the most possible revenue for the upper echelon bowl games, which is why Mizzou is being stuck in the Armed Forces Bowl. That's the reality. One more note that I wanted to throw in before, again, I go in depth on the game preview is we've seen a lot of COVID issues arise in the NFL right now, mostly due to the holiday season. And also, another thing you have to consider is these kids, they've had a couple weeks off since the end of the season. They've been out and about. Let's cross our fingers that no one is catching COVID and spreading it around the team, or else you could see some of these bowl games become in jeopardy. If coaches or players start testing positive in mass numbers, We could have a scenario like last year's and Mizzou doesn't even get to play again. I think that's something to watch that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about yet. But the NFL, they've seen over 100 players put on the COVID-19 list over the past 3 days. Just 3 days, they've had enough players to make up 2 complete NFL rosters go on the COVID list. So let's cross our fingers. All right, now, looking at the game. First of all, this is also a good matchup because a little underlying storyline to it is that Jeff Monken, if you guys remember, was on that Mizzou Final 3 list from Jim Sirk during that disastrous coaching search before they hired Eli Drinkwitz. So Jeff Monken, this is a guy that Mizzou could have almost hired, and they're going to be going up against him. I think Jeff Monken remembers that, and he's got a little bit of extra motivation going into this game, so he might pull a few rabbits out of a hat that Mizzou might not quite be prepared for. That's one thing to watch for. This is also a game for Eli Drinkwitz to prove, hey, Mizzou, you made the right hire. Let's go out there and beat a team that we can beat and we most likely should beat. Because I want to give Army their props. They're a solid team. They're a difficult team. They're a headache for coaches and other teams because they can run the ball. They can shoot clock. They run the triple option, which, I'm sure you guys have heard a ton of talk about that from other outlets. The triple option, it's difficult to defend. We've seen that as they ran all over Wake Forest this year. They gave Wisconsin some trouble. But at the same time, Army, they're a beatable team. And in their last game of this season against Navy, they lost and they only put up 13 points. And guys, Navy was terrible this year. Navy was 3-8 heading into that game, and they upset Army. So this is a game that Mizzou absolutely should win. Army's offense it's strictly a running offense. Like I said, they only average 8 passing attempts per game. They're going to run the ball as often as they can. They're going to chew a lot of clock. You just have to get some stops, and you have to be able to get off the field. They've recruited pretty well along the offensive front in the trenches, which teams like that are teams that gave Mizzou trouble earlier in the year. But since Jethro Franklin was fired and Al Davis was promoted to defensive line coach, and you've seen the Mizzou defensive line start to get a little bit healthier, they've looked a lot better. So if their talent, because they have more talent than Army, I firmly believe that, and they rise to the occasion, they should be able to overwhelm Army up front. Trajan Jeffcoat's got to step up like he has recently. Isaiah McGuire has to step up like he has recently. Darius Robinson, Kobe Whiteside, guys like that, they've all got to step up this game, just like they did late in the year. Linebackers as well. Blaise Aldridge, he struggled very early on, ended up getting benched for a period of time. Then he improved. The game slowed down for him a little bit, and he started to look a lot better. Chad Bailey, who wasn't a contributor at all up until late this year, all of a sudden looks like a pretty damn good linebacker for Mizzou, and he's made some plays. I also think this is a game where some of the younger players, true freshmen and sophomores, maybe get some more playing time than you would see during a regular season game, especially depending on how the game is going. Like, if Mizzou gets up pretty big, or let's hope this doesn't happen. If it ends up looking like Army's going to run away with it, literally and figuratively, then, you could see some of the other younger Mizzou players play in this game too. I know a couple linebacker recruits that Drinkwitz has brought in that people are excited about, or Zach Lovett and Damian Wilson. Who knows? Maybe we see some of them in this game, especially since Army, we know they're going to run the ball so much. Those guys, they could get gassed and may need a breather here and there. I expect Mizzou's secondary in this game to be a combination of guys that are their best tacklers. Like, Jalen Carley's, I know in that last game against Arkansas, I saw a few plays where he tried to go for an arm tackle or a dive, and instead of wrapping up, if any of the defensive backs try to pull that, I would put someone else in, because you've got to make tackles in this game. Martez Manuel has had a few really bad whiffs this year, even though he was expected to be one of the leaders of this defense, and he still is vocally. But if I'm Drinkwitz and Steve Wilkes and those guys, I'm saying, if you're not willing to tackle in this game, you are not going to play, because we need to make tackles. A lot of you are going to be playing in the box a lot. You've got to pay attention to the run, work well on your run fits. If you're not going to tackle, you're not going to play. I am totally in favor of Mizzou sacrificing some of its coverage ability in this game to stop the run. Like I said, Army, they don't pass the ball that much, and they're not a prolific passing offense. Yeah, they're still going to try to catch Mizzou off guard a couple times. Like, the coaches aren't stupid, and Army knows that, hey, we're known for running the ball, so maybe we can throw a few passes in there when they're not expecting it, and maybe something good will happen. You still got to be prepared for that. We know that Missouri was historically bad at stopping the run at the beginning of the year. They were dead last in FBS in run defense. And then we saw that midseason turnaround. It sort of started right around the North Texas game, or right around after that. They still gave up a few big plays in that game, but also some of that was garbage time. Point is, though, they've turned it around. Steve Wilkes, he's rallied the troops. I think the coaching switch to Al Davis at the defensive line made a lot of the difference, too. I think he's a good energy guy. He really gets these guys amped up. They love him, it seems like. And then, like I said, Mizzou just got healthier as well. But, there's been a lot of factors that have been attributed to this turnaround on the defense. But Missouri got hot. They got better towards the end of the year. I'm really hoping that with this, few-week break in between the last game of the season and the bowl game, that they haven't lost that edge and they don't go right back to being a mediocre run defense. Because if that happens, then there's going to be some issues. I just really hope that this team keeps their sense of urgency that they had, because they're going to need it in this game. But if they play up to the way they were playing against Florida, against South Carolina, Arkansas, they gave up some big plays in that game, but that was more in the passing game than the running game. And also their quarterback, KJ Jefferson, he scrambled for a couple big plays. That's going to happen. But you get my point. If they can play the way they were playing in those games, then they should be able to harass Army a little bit, maybe throw them into passing a little bit more. And look, if you get into a scenario early on where you're forcing Army to feel like they have to throw the ball to get back in the game, that's going to be huge. Because if you can take them out of their run and take them out of what they're comfortable doing, we could quickly see Mizzou start to put up points on the board by getting their offense back on the field, hoping that they're functional in this game, which we'll get to. If I had a tip to give to the defense, I would say don't over pursue, because in that triple option, sometimes it's very hard to know who is going to get the ball. You don't want to get caught chasing down the wrong guy, and then someone runs the other way and they have the ball, and then boom, a quick 10 yards down the field, and all of a sudden they're driving and they're about to score on you. Don't over pursue. Know what you're doing. Really work on your play recognition leading up to this game. I'm sure they've been in the film room a lot to see what Army has done this year. And wrap up on your tackles. No arm tackling. Don't do what you did at the beginning of the season. Or, like I said earlier, kind of like with Martez Emanuel and Jalen Carlise. If we see any arm tackling or diving at the legs with no wrapping up, you're out of here. Or you're getting benched at least for this game. As I mentioned earlier, Caleb Evans, he's not going to be playing in this game. Now, remember, he didn't play in the Florida game either because of a soft tissue injury. I believe it was on his leg. And in that game, they started freshman DJ Jackson in his place, and he looked pretty damn good. And he had a couple nice tackles in that game, too. I would expect him to play a lot in this game, along with some of the other younger defensive backs. Kind of the same philosophy with the linebackers that I had. Maybe they run the ball a lot, and those guys, they just need a breather. They're taking a bunch of hits, whatnot. It's a bowl game. Usually you see younger players playing a bowl game, especially since your depth has taken a hit a little bit with some of the transfers, like Jatorian Hansford. He played a little bit more towards the end of the season. He just transferred to South Florida. Ishmael Burdine, he's no longer with the program. Guys like that, they're gone. And those are guys that played sparingly, not a ton, but they were in the 3 deep at their positions. So it's like now someone else has to take their spot. So maybe we see someone else too in some of those other positions. Now the offense. And this is the part I was looking forward to talking about, because everyone's wondering what quarterback is going to play in this game, and everyone's hoping that it's not Connor Bazelak, including myself. I got really frustrated at the end of the Arkansas game, because he clearly didn't have it. He only passed for 60 yards in the game. He had an interception. He was terrible, and it got to the point for me where I'm like, Coach, Drink, you have Brady Cook and Tyler Macon on your bench. I would hope for those guys that their absolute floor is what Connor Bazelak did in that Arkansas game. If they're worse than what Connor Bazelak did in that game, then they shouldn't have a scholarship. And I understand players will have bad games, but Connor Bazelak has been like this for a while, and he's gotten, continually worse, right? For lack of a better term, but you get what I mean. He was bad for a while, and then he was really bad in that game. And through 3 quarters, by then, I feel like he should have came to the conclusion that he needed to make a switch. And at the end, he gave us, before the game too, he gave us that answer that, we feel like Connor Bazelak gives us the best chance to win. I don't buy that. I'm not totally sure Drink does either. I think that may be more coach speak. And something that a lot of people haven't really brought up is that Drinkwitz, if he wins this bowl game, he has an incentive in his contract. I forget how much the bonus is. I think it's like $50,000 or something like that, which some people may say, oh, that's not a lot of money. That's not a lot of money to Drinkwitz. He's making $4 million a year already. Well, some people don't even make $50,000 in a year, including myself. I don't make $50,000 in a year. I mean, I'm young, but you get my point. I don't make $50,000 in a year. That's another year of salary that he could put away for one of his 3 daughters. I think he has 3 daughters. But yeah, I mean, he has a bonus in this game. He has an incentive beyond just wanting to win and wanting to win a trophy. He gets money if he wins this game. So we're going to see who he really thinks gives him the best chance to win. And he said to the media this week, open competition at quarterback. He said that in weeks past, and he would end up rolling out Bazelak again. But, I'll take his word for it this time around. He said it's an open competition at quarterback, and I believe that we will see Brady Cook. If I had to put money down right now, I would think we see Brady Cook start this game. Maybe Connor Bazelak starts, and he has a really short leash, but I think at one point or another, Brady Cook is coming in this game, and he's going to take control. Because maybe Drinkwitz doesn't want to just bench Bazelak before the game, not even give him a chance. And we know Bazelak wasn't quite healthy either. I think his bad performances went beyond him just being not healthy, but it was clear that he wasn't healthy in those games. He's lost some mobility. His throwing mechanics seem a little bit off compared to last year, so maybe he's taken some time to heal up, and Drinkwitz gives him one more shot. But I imagine it'll be a short leash, and then maybe we could see some Brady Cook. And Drinkwitz has to be careful how he plays this, because if Connor Bazelak goes out there again and he stinks it up, and I'm Brady Cook, or even Tyler Macon in this scenario, I'm thinking about entering the transfer portal, because if Connor Bazelak is this freaking bad, and I still can't play after weeks of this type of performance, I'm saying, when am I ever going to get on the field? I'm never going to get on the field here with this Bazelak dude, because Drinkwitz just has this blind allegiance to him. And that's been one of the most frustrating parts about Drinkwitz. I have full faith in Drinkwitz. I love Drinkwitz, and I really think he's the right coach for this program. But, and look, Bazelak might be the right guy at practice. He may be performing well at practice and the drills, and that's fine and all. But at some point, you have to admit he's not getting it done in the games. I'd also be open to Tyler Macon playing a little bit in this game in certain packages, because if you guys watched the last game between Army and Navy, I know a lot of people who aren't fans of either team just always tune into the Army-Navy game because it's a tradition, and it's always a pretty good game. But when Navy upset Army, their mobile quarterback gave them trouble. They had trouble stopping Navy's quarterback, and it was because he could run. So maybe you put Tyler Macon out there a little bit and see what he can do, because we know he can run. We've seen it. We saw it against Vanderbilt, and we saw it against Georgia. As far as the running game, Tyler Beatty's playing in this game. We know what he can do. Army knows what he can do. We saw Tyler Beatty run for 200 yards, or have 200 yards from scrimmage in 5 games this year, right? And that was against some pretty good competition. Again, Army deserves their props. They're a solid team. But, their defense I'll say this. Army, they had a good rushing defense this year statistically, but a lot of that was their competition. They had one of the softest non-conference schedules this year. Here, I'll read you some of the teams they played. Georgia State, Mercer, Connecticut, one of the worst teams in college football. Ball State, who they lost to. Bucknell, UMass. I mean, come on. That's not good competition. It's just not. I respect Army's defense, but this should still be a game. Tyler Beatty, he can go off again. I mean, he did it against good competition this year, Tyler Beatty. I would expect no different against Army. I think Mizzou will feed him the ball, especially because they want to win this game. And if Mizzou wants to win the game, they're going to put the ball in their best player's hands more often than not. And that is Tyler Beatty, 100%. A lot of it will be dependent on if Missouri's O-line can step up in this game. Missouri's O-line has been kind of ho-hum for the past 2 seasons with Eli Drinkwitz. Now, I expect that to improve once he gets his recruits in here. He's recruited along the trenches pretty well since he's began his career here. But their offensive line has been pretty ho-hum. I mean, they have had some impressive games considering the level of talent that they have. And then there's other games where they get pushed around because, look, I mean, they don't have a ton of SEC talent guys playing along the offensive line. But if they can get some solid push in this game, Tyler Beatty will get going, especially in the screen game too, not just with Tyler Beatty, but with some of the other receivers. If their offensive line can get out and if they can push some guys around against Army, then they'll have a pretty good chance to have a good day. Case Cook won't play in this game, obviously, because he's out for the season, which sucks. But we've seen EJ Ndoma Ogar, the Oklahoma transfer, get some late run, and he's been a road grader in the run game. So I like what I've seen from him. Michael Maietti will also be playing in this game still. That's one of the reasons he stayed. He's second team All-SEC. We know what he can do. Javon Foster has also been pretty good at left tackle this year, so I'm confident in this group. I'm cautiously optimistic with this group. They just can't afford to come out flat, bottom line. And then there's the passing game, which I think right next to the defense is the biggest factor in this game. Because Missouri, obviously, they're going to run the ball too with Tyler Beatty. I just said it a minute ago, you want to put the ball in your best player's hands more often than not to win this game, and that's going to be Tyler Beatty, who's a running back. Hence, they'll run the ball a lot. And Army will run the ball a lot too, which I think will make this game go by pretty quick. I'd be surprised if this game went for 4 hours, like a lot of the other games. But Mizzou's going to have to pass the ball too, because their best case scenario to start out the game will be to get up big. And in order to do that, they're going to have to hit some of these downfield passing plays that, quite frankly, Connor Bazelak, if he plays in this game, he has not been able to hit. There were a couple gimmies in the Arkansas game where Booth Smith and Dominic Lovett were both open early. I think it was those two, if I'm not mistaken. And he just flat out missed both of them. Those are plays that can turn a game. You have to make those throws. If Connor Bazelak can't make those throws, that's going to be frustrating. But the receivers, they haven't been a huge factor this year. I forget even who their leading receiver is. It might be Kiki Chisholm. I could be wrong on that, but Mizzou hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Jamon Moore, so let's just be honest. Their receivers aren't that explosive. Kiki Chisholm, Toski Dove, guys like that, they're not going to burn you downfield. They're not physical specimens, but you know what they are is they're possession receivers. They're bigger bodies. One thing I noticed with the play calling, another aspect in which I've been frustrated with Eli Drinkwitz is play calling. And he's a young coach, and he doesn't really have the horses to run what he wants to run yet. So I understand that. But when you have bigger receivers like Kiki Chisholm and Toski Dove, why are you throwing low percentage fades on third down? Send one of those guys on a slant. I don't think I saw a single slant ran against Arkansas, which I think was a crime, quite honestly. You need to utilize your big receivers, assuming they can catch the ball, because we know how Mizzou receivers are with drops. You got to catch the ball. That's part of it too, of course. But you're just going to need explosive plays from the receivers as well too. Connor Bazelak, you got to hit him downfield. Receivers, you got to get open downfield. I don't want to make it seem like it's all been Connor Bazelak's fault. Mizzou receivers this year just haven't gotten a lot of separation. A player that we've seen make an impact as a true freshman, and then his usage kind of fell off in the later games, is Dominic Lovett. They would put him on a sweep or get him the ball in space, and that would work out pretty well. Go back to doing that. I would love to see Dominic Lovett play more in this game, especially if you feel like he's going to be part of your future. Mookie Cooper as well. I know it's been a disappointing season for him, but I think a lot of it has been health-wise too. If he's healthy, now that he's had a couple weeks, get him the ball in space. Let's get some of these big plays downfield. Let's hit some deep throws. Let's get the passing offense going. 60 passing yards isn't going to cut it. If this comes down to which team can run the ball better, then, I'd be chewing my nails a little bit. So to me, the Mizzou passing offense, that is the biggest factor in this game right next to the defense. If Mizzou can get the passing offense going, put some points on the board, force Army to get out of their comfort zone, then I'll feel pretty confident. Now for this game, my final prediction before we head into it, I'm going to go Mizzou 27, Army 16. If Mizzou, like I said, can stop the run, their defense plays to the level they were towards the end of the year, I don't think Army will score a ton of points. Yeah, they'll take some time off the clock, they'll run the ball, they're going to score a little bit, but they didn't score that much against Navy. I don't have a ton of reason to believe, like I said, if Mizzou's defense is on it, that they'll score a ton against Mizzou either. Especially considering the talent level of Mizzou compared to Army. I do think Mizzou has the upper hand in talent, so let's hope so. But yeah, Army, I think they'll only score 13 to 16 points in this game, and then I hope we see Brady Cook or a different quarterback, and if that's the case, I would love for them to get going, and maybe Mizzou gets close to 30 points. But yeah, that's my prediction, 27-16 Mizzou. I want to hear from you guys, though. What do you think will happen in this game? What are some of the biggest things you're looking for in this game? Let me know. But all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com.